everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTrain.tv, where we will be flying the plane today, but today we're going to deliberately crash the plane and talk about the emergency procedures. So this is if you're an airline pilot, for those of you wondering how this works. If you are an airline captain, then this is where you quit flying for the day. You're off the schedule in terms of real passengers. We bring you onto the simulator, and you're flying along, and then you pretend you fly for United, and we have the engines explode and windows blow out and mayhem. And so the live stream schedule today is I'm at Claris headquarters. You want to support the channel so Margaret can afford good hardware and good technology that actually doesn't explode into flames. Go to the you can purchase a bundle from RC Consulting. The bundles are here. Purchase a bundle, renew the bundle, because what I need to do is Jacob sent me a request. He wants 5 new giant orange sweatshirts, and I need to save the piggy bank up to pay for those giant orange sweatshirts. Caltrans certified. There you go. So Jacob has his own personal swag. I don't get Caltrans orange for anyone else except Margaret. The 2 craziest people I know about colors are both orange freaks, and they are on the show today together. So pivoting forward to today's conversation. Today's conversation is, once again, discussing kind of this emergency procedure thing with you in terms of FileMaker Server. So FileMaker Server, I had a conversation. This goes back, I don't know, 10 years ago. And if you watch some of our training videos, we talk about what to do in the event the FileMaker crashes and explodes. You can watch those videos, or we're going to talk about it live. If you have questions, it's a great opportunity for you to ask questions about that, what the emergency procedures can and should be. The interesting part about it was that in the on-demand videos, the paid courses, we'd actually have a little fire explosion come out of the FileMaker Server, and the marketing department at Claris sent me a note saying, please note that our product does not catch fire and explode. And I'm like, well, kinda, right? Kinda. Jacob Taylor would care to differ on that a little bit. So what there is that once you have FileMaker Server running, historically, people say, well, I should still, this came up online the other day. I don't know what Claris is doing. I'm still using FileMaker 11, and it solves all my problems, and it has the latest, greatest security, and the new one doesn't do anything that the old one didn't do, blah, 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 right? That's someone who's way too grumpy. I'm going to get you a walker, so when we put you in the old folks home, you can walk around and not trip and fall on yourself. So the issue, the FileMaker platform, the Claris FileMaker platform, heavy investments in bug fixes and stability and making the server boring. Servers are supposed to be boring. There was a product manager years gone by named Terry Barwigan, who now works at Apple, I think. And he was always said that he wanted the server to be the most boring software he ever saw. And so every release, generally, there's progress towards being more boring. Every once in a while, Jacob will tell you about this. If you ask him, he'll say, well, it's 2 steps forward, then you'll get this like dot release, and it's 1 step back because Claris lets some bugs slip through. But generally, it's always 2 or 3 steps forward, then you'll get the random 1 step backward. But the progression is if you're not using within the last year or 2, at least the latest version of FileMaker, you're missing out on a lot of benefit. And I would recommend staying up to date, no more than 1 year out on the release, because Claris only supports the current release plus 2 years back, right? 2 years back. So whatever 2 years is, right? Let's talk about the emergency procedures. So let's bring up this is Jacob. Hi, Jacob. How are you?
Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone.
I'm more talented people I know. Fantastic. Some of you have had servers set up with him. He's the guy that gets the call frequently if the server runs great for years and years and years, and suddenly it falls over. So what are the emergency procedures, right? What is this all about? You want to start the conversation, Mr. Taylor?
Sure. So I think we'll get into the document. We'll show admin console, stuff like that here in a little bit. But I think if I had to summarize what you're trying to do when you're coming into a crash, this is a disaster response, right? There's something wrong, someone's reported, FileMaker's down, right? You'll get an email, a call, a text, something like that.
Yes.
The thing I would say, and this is absolutely non-technical, 10,000-foot view, what you are endeavoring to do is not to make it worse, right? Just bluntly, that's what you're trying to do.
I'm not disagreeing. I think it's point blank. That's very true. Very true.
And So we have different recommendations, and we'll get into this. It's all on the first page of this document. We're going to give you the link. Don't worry about it. But the core, that's the core, like the kernel that we want to really communicate today. So we RCC, we have recommendations for how you configure FileMaker Server out of the box. For example, settings that you turn off or turn on. Things like that. And so what all of those things are little additional cuts at giving you a chance not to make it worse when you're coming in there. It's down, the business is offline, or there's a problem. We don't know. We're going to investigate. We're going to find out. But you're coming into it. Either your hair is on fire, your manager, your business owner, the CEO, whatever, finance, whoever, right? Whoever's using this system. And you want to put yourself in a situation where even when everything is on fire, you can still mostly be successful. And that is getting the business back up and running again, generally, with either a minimum or no actual data loss. And then again, without causing a cascading problem of some kind where, and so as an example, if you are one of our big no-nos is reusing a crashed file, that cascades. You get damage in your database. Maybe it's a problem the first time, maybe it's not. By the second, third, fifth, whatever, it will accumulate. You will have real issues. The file will no longer be able to open on the server. You can end up with situations like that where it's so horrifically damaged you have to take it to Claris and have engineering get in there with their little screwdrivers and fix
when
the
they
database
decide
for
to
you.
have time to do that. Yeah. So let
Right.
me jump in real quick. So Jacob pointed out you're going to walk into this. It's the same as a guy who's on the flight deck of the airliner. We're flying along, and suddenly, wham, and you have an alarm going off and a bunch of red lights on the dash. And if you're flying a 737 Southwest, the right engine just let go, and you're flying. And it's designed to fly in one engine. And your job is to land the aircraft without killing everyone in the back of the plane. And I mean that very seriously. The airplane is disposable. If you can reuse the airplane, that's great, but not hurting anyone and not getting anyone killed is the goal. And that's that your passenger is the FileMaker database. Let's just be clear about that. So you're going to be panicked. You're going to be stressed. People want it back up immediately. Let me just preface this conversation as we get going here is that in the world of FileMaker, we say, we're going to make a report. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. There's 5 or 10 ways to do it correctly. This is one of those points where there are not 5 or 10 ways to do it correctly. There is probably 1 and maybe 2 ways, if that many, to land the plane without killing everyone. And so I mean that very seriously. And so we have a customer right now. I'm not going to mention their name, but I've been talking to them for 20 years. And they're like, Richard, we don't like to use FileMaker Server. I go, well, how do you do backups? Well, we kind of do backups when we feel like it because we're using peer-to-peer because we don't want to. They're a big money operation. We're talking people who had a Fortune 500 company. They sold it off, and then they went into business building small software, but they didn't want to use FileMaker Server because it was too much money. Except that they're dealing with lots of money, so they just didn't want to spend the money to pay for it, and which means they didn't have the automatic backups. Which means this whole conversation about landing the airplane is predicated on being able to land it with having backups, right? It's basically like having the second engine on the airplane. So if you lose one engine, you keep flying and you can slowly descend and land with one engine. Okay. That's what backups allow you to do, land the airplane without killing everyone. So I'm going to tell you that if you ignore me on this, that's fine. But they were so confident. And then here we are years later and they're on fire. And I don't know that we can save them. And I mean that very seriously. And Jacob doesn't know whether we can save them or not. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But all the engines are gone, and we're really going down. And
that specific customer is to the point where I have a few more things to try, but the short version is the next real big step on it is what I said in the beginning, which is I have to take the file to Claris to try and see if they can help.
Yeah.
So the short version actually is, anyway, a very short summary of this story. Client server falls over approximately daily. In FileMaker Server, the actual singular application. We've talked about the architecture before. There's a lot of different processes that make up a FileMaker Server, big, and then FileMaker Server, small, the singular process that directly hosts the databases for you for FileMaker Pro and Go Access. That process specifically locks up 100% CPU, one core. What that usually means is there's damage in the file structure somewhere that FileMaker it's not crashing, falling over dead or something, but it can't deal with it. And so it panics or freaks out or whatever. And that means the application is inaccessible to the users. And so you have to go through some sort of recovery mechanism at that point. We had tried different updates, recovers, all the, standard set of things you might do to help a customer. And they're actually now on the very latest version of the software and still experiencing it, which means it is something core to the database.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and that's kind of the rub with this. So, and we're here largely because they have not been restoring from the backup. So let's get to our checklist because that's like the top of the list. So you want to share your screen, pop the checklist. So every good pilot has a checklist. In the event of emergency, you're going to pop the checklist. Some things you have to do by memory, right? But if you have time, you always pop the checklist and start reading it. Some things are just, you don't have time for the checklist, you just do them. But this is one of those where hopefully you should know never to use a crash file if that's the one thing you memorize, and then read the checklist for everything else. So there he goes. So, okay. So we're looking at
you were waiting on permissions for me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So, yeah, so this is the FileMaker server. Now we have the PDF or the Word.
You got it. I got it. There it is.
There we go. So this is the checklist. So this even has the official emergency placarding around the edges, just like a regular thing. So in the event your FileMaker server crashes, okay, right? The short version is that there's probably some sort of hardware restart involved, probably, okay? The item number 2 is the essential item that people won't follow. And then it's called technical debt. It's the idea that, sooner or later you're going to have to make good on the payment for the debt that you've charged up on your credit card. And if you don't want to have that debt, you need to restore from the last good backup. And we've had people, even in Claris, so I'm not going to get off in the weeds. Let's just say that you need to use the last good backup. If you don't have a last good backup, then you literally took off with one engine on fire already. Okay, you took off the plane with one engine already on fire. So, and then you're just waiting for the last one to die. So, yeah, walk us through this. So restoring the database, right? So let's talk about this, Jacob.
Yeah. So the very first step, and so we start with like the simple, we have like process. And so there's 5 or 6 points here about basic operations you're going to do to try and recover a FileMaker server. The later pages of this also have like worked examples. I don't know if we'll show those today or not. I think we're going to probably either demo or kind of fake it or something, but just as far as demonstrating one of these things. But yeah, the very short version is to try and get in there. You're going to do a couple of different things. If you can immediately and easily identify what the specific problem is, then you can deal with that in general. But there's a lot of kind of, we'll say, weird software issues. If you've ever been a Windows user, there are many things on a Windows computer where if you just reboot it, we don't know what the problem was. It's now fixed. Congratulations. And that's awesome. However, sometimes you still want to know, and so you'll come in after the fact and look at some of this stuff. So in general, what you're going to be doing is, if you know it's crashed, FileMaker server's crashed, you can go in there and just see things are down, it's inaccessible. Perfect. You're always going to do approximately the same thing. There's going to be a server reboot in there somewhere. The machine is going to go down and come back up again. Power button, reboot on Windows, on Mac, on Linux, whatever. You're going to be doing something like that. You're definitely going to be restoring to whatever the last good backup is. You will need to, it may be easy to identify what the last good backup is, but there may be some investigation. There's been a few different scenarios that I've observed where, for example, FileMaker Server will stop producing logs under a couple different scenarios. That makes identifying the last good backup very difficult. It's very easy if you can just go to the end of the log and it looks weird. There's an example in here that talks about log seams. So like the server's running, you're going down the log, and then suddenly it's booting. That's surprising. It never shut down. That's weird. And so you can look at that and say, okay, there's our break. We had a problem, but that's also really helpful because right in the up from the break, you can go, oh, what was the last backup that ran? And it goes, oh yeah, completed successfully. Perfect. There's your first and immediate candidate for which file you're going to restore from backup. There's a few different troubleshooting things that you can do in here. For example, it's basically looking around at these are technical specific things that you'll do, but it's looking around at the server, surveying the environment. So what's working, what's not. There are a few different customers where we've gotten calls or alerts or stuff like that. And fundamentally, actually, FileMaker was up. Users were reporting it was down. Internet was a problem. FileMaker Server was running great, right? So you can have stuff like that where it's not a crash, it's not anything else. You go look, validate. Nope, we're good. Never went down. Some kind of internet problem.
Yeah. So step one is not unplug the server and plug it back in. That you want to verify the server's actually gone.
Yep.
Is left, right?
Yep.
So
and then like what's crashed and kind of I'll just say, generally speaking, what state the server is currently in. Are the files open or closed? If the process is running or not. The admin console looks good, seems to be doing great, but the files are closed. Or it went down and the files are open. That's a red flag right there. For example.
The machine might restart itself too, for whatever reason.
Correct.
So you might get back, and this gets back to some important settings and stuff. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so if it does reboot itself, it could be a memory problem, something like that. There's a thing like this these days on every operating system, but I will just say the blue screen of death everyone's familiar with from Windows. So you get something like that. That's obviously a crash. Server machine might come back up again. FileMaker Server, all things ideal, will probably come back up again after that. If you've configured your server correctly, it will not open those databases and you will be down. That is that's one of the configuration changes that we recommend. And I'm actually going to switch to the admin console so I can just show it to you. So this is our demo admin console. We're going to come in here and let's hope I've set this correctly. Yes, I did. So I'm not showing my.
It's actually probably the number one recommendation we have. Right.
Yeah.
I think above all things.
There's basically two, and the other one's for performance. This one's top recommendation if you do nothing else. This setting right here. This is the one, and this little toggle. This is on by default when you install the software, and what it means is computer comes up. So it sounds great, just to be clear. Computer comes up, FileMaker Server goes, oh, I'm on auto start. It boots up. Fantastic. It is done booting. It looks in its database locations and it says, there's some files in there. Let me open them really quick. No, don't do that. And the reason is because if you, the human, like rebooted the server, for example, you applied some operating system updates or you updated FileMaker Server, whatever, right? Something like that. Updated another component that's, none of that. Okay. When it comes back up again, you did that. You know it. You can go in there and open the databases. You went in beforehand, you closed them down, maybe even I know some of my older senior engineers do this. They will go in and close the databases each, not individually, but manually at least. And then they'll also shut down FileMaker Server, totally the service itself manually. And then the machine will reboot. So, and I don't express a preference. I think it's at this point, as long as the files are closed, you're good. And when you come back up again, you're going to open them because you did it.
Just to clarify real quick, this is a chance for you to have a quick drink. So, so I drink and you drink, we're back and forth. The databases, the FileMaker, and all databases are mostly like this, even SQL and Oracle systems. When you open the file, it goes through a process of opening it and reading into memory, and then the operating system is working closely with the file in an open state. When you close the file down, there's all this little housekeeping and shutdown and saving the little bits in the right spots and checking everything. And so there's this whole close down process that goes onto the file. The point is that if you just pull the plug on the server, that close down process, that cleanup, the saving, maybe there's some data that the user wrote that's in the RAM memory never got written to the drive, whether it's solid state or spin drive or whatever, it doesn't matter, was never really fully committed into the actual file. You pull the plug on it, and so you have half of a record or missing data, or you were in a layout doing some work. And so the whole point is it didn't go through a proper shutdown. That's the issue here fundamentally, right? But the senior people in the community are committed to this as a unviable. I mean, we disagree on a lot of stuff. Like some people are like, oh, I want to use, Docker and stuff, whatever. You can have opinion. The community is largely absolutely in agreement on the top item right there, the disable. So we all know that if the machine shut down unnaturally, it probably didn't close the files properly, probably. So if you're in the airplane and you suddenly yaw really hard and alarms go off, probably the engine shut off or blew up or fell off. Okay, it's gone. That's a pretty good clue. Okay, this is right here is, hey, if the engine blew up and flew off, don't try to put gas into it to restart it. Is basically what this is. Okay, make it worse. We as developers want to protect our customers. Mostly, it's not that we don't love you or anything. We all, Jacob probably hates everyone, but he doesn't want to get a phone call where people are mad at him.
Yep.
Or unhappy. And so this causes a little bit of a slowdown in the action right here. You can't just immediately come to server, but we want it to take a breath. Look at the server. Is it still running? Maybe the files are still running and they're fine. Maybe you're not sure, but they're still running. So you can tell them to close the files and it does the proper shutdown. And if you do a proper shutdown, then maybe you don't have to restart from a backup, right? That's why you take a breath and you slow down and you look at it, right? But this keeps the server from automatically reopening files that were never closed in the first place. And 99% of you can violate this rule once, twice, or 3 times, and you won't notice any problems. But at some point, the damage is cumulative. If you do have an exceedance, it's called an exceedance. Once again, aircraft, I fly too fast, I do too much of a hard roll or do whatever I do, and it's exceedance, little exceedance, 5%. Oh, no one notices. You do it over and you do it over and you do it over, and it causes metal fatigue on a car, driving a car too fast, sideways, doing whatever you do, fast and furious in your Tesla, okay? Sooner or later, the parts wear out prematurely. And what you're doing is you're going to, where database theoretically would never have a corruption problem. And we almost never have them when people follow this. But if you do this and do this and do this 5 times, 10 times, 20 times somewhere, when you tell it to open the file, an error message will come up and it says, no, you're not allowed to open it. It's too badly damaged. Call Claris. All right, so we beat this horse to death. We want to move along on the checklist. So what that looks like?
I went back to it. So, all right, we'll just say in the 10,000 foot view, we have looked at the server. We're considering what is crashed. We have maybe reviewed a log somewhere and determined, this hourly backup is the best one to restore from. And then we're going to do that. And then we're going to try to bring the system back online. You can have issues with that. Actually, there's an annoying bug on Mac we see to this day with SSL certificates breaking FileMaker Server and stuff like that. Specifically in the case where, I think that's one of our examples actually, but specifically in the case where the machine crashes randomly, like a power plug scenario, you can end up with SSL that no longer works on the machine anymore. But for the most part, once you've restored from backups, you'll usually be able to bring the machine up again. There are some considerations after the fact, though. Once you get everybody back in, people are accessing it. You're on that new backup or whatever, so you have precluded corruption from now entering the database. Fantastic. So then you can go and look after the fact and say, all right, we can work backwards and say, try and figure out what went wrong if we can. So for example, and I think this is on our second page here, there's a few different things. Yeah, so that's our little thing. And then we get all these bullet points, which I think I can make. Yeah, they fit on screen perfect. So these are a few of these bullet points I covered kind of previously, especially with like the log seams and stuff like that. But this gives basic overview directions on how to restore a backup. By default, where they're located, you can relocate them. FileMaker Server also allows additional database directories, so you can have like multiple file locations where something might get put back. Pay attention to which one and where. It may matter for your system. I've had customers, for example, ask me to build a solution where a big file sits on a big slow drive, for example, because it's not going to be backed up that often, but they have like a hot data set. And so when you come into a system like that and it's crashed and you're doing a restoration from backups, you have to like pay attention to which place each file goes, stuff like that, so that you don't lose container data or something wild like that. But just in general, you're going to bring the files back live, open them up, confirm users can access, and then do a little post. Oh yeah, there's these warnings. These are great too. Read these carefully if you are on Mac, actually, specifically. Those are very, very, very important. They are about how Mac works, actually. That's why we say Command C. Please do an actual copy and an actual paste when you're restoring from backup on Mac. You will have problems if you do not do that. About once a year, maybe once every 18 months. It's not too often, but it's often enough that we have to note it. Someone will email me and say, hey, they watch our videos, they follow the directions, they had their own crash. They didn't call me to help because, for the most part, this can be straightforward if you can figure out, oh, it crashed, the power went out, right? That one's an easy one. Oh, just go to a backup. You don't have to worry about it too hard. Stuff like that, where it's really clear what happened. But they'll try and do the backup restoration themselves. And there's like a couple little notes that you need to pay attention to with Mac is copying and pasting. Don't drag and drop, which is what a lot of Mac users do. That will not do what you want on Mac is the short version. So,
well, you can drag and drop. You hold the Option key down. You have the little green icon that pops up, which means you're going to make a copy. And this has to do with hard linking, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but Jacob, sure. I thought hard linking is supported on Windows. So is it not a Windows thing too? It should be.
It is 100%. Yep.
So it's not just Mac OS, it's Windows too?
Yes, but what Windows does, so Windows will actually move when you drag and drop. That will bring all the file information with it though. So in a lot of the Windows environments we deal with, there aren't permission considerations or something like that when you're moving things from point A to point B. There are in a lot of enterprise scenarios. And so, yeah, in that, absolutely. If you're going to copy a backup out of a backup location and paste it into the FileMaker Server directory because you're serving them from like the default location, for situations like that with a centrally controlled Windows system, you've got Active Directory set up and actual permissions imposed or something like that. You may have to approve yourself as admin or, something like that, because there is a permissions boundary there on Windows. But it looks different and it's louder than it is on Mac. You won't accidentally make that mistake. Most of the time, I think.
Yeah,
there's exactly one client who's made that mistake before, but
yeah, the issue real quick is the hard linking. So to save it's to save drive space, and this works on Mac and most Windows installs, is that when it writes a copy on a backup, it writes the first one it writes on a backup, it writes a complete set of files, containers, and everything, right? And then on the second backup, when it runs a backup again, it's going to see if anything changed. And if nothing changed, it's not going to make a complete set of everything. It's only going to write the files that have changed, if any. And then, so if you had a 10 gigabyte file, but 100 megabyte little sub file or a couple containers changed, it's going to write, complete files. But, the idea is that it doesn't write everything, right? And so it can save time. But what it does is both backups are essentially nothing changed. So I'm waving my hands here, but you have two backups. So the first backup is a complete set. The second backup, the computer knew it was an identical copy. So it says, hey, I'm going to pretend it's a copy on the second one here, but I'm going to reference the first one. Okay. And then, and if you quit working with a database, say at 5 or 6 o'clock, and you run hourly backups, which would be the minimum I would recommend is hourly. Then you could have from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you could have 10 or 12 copies that look like 12 copies, 12 times 10 gigabytes. However, there's only one real copy and they all reference the one. And if you grab that one, you have disrupted all those other backups. So you have to you don't grab it and move it, you copy it. That's why. Yep. And It has to do with not breaking the hard linking. So very, very important.
And in that case, Windows or Mac both will like resolve the file correctly. If you're thinking about, oh, there's this giant stack of pointers that pretends to be a folder, right? Let the operating system do the work
if you make
for
a
you.
copy of it, it will figure that out and deliver you a full, complete, fresh copy from wherever those little files are at. It'll make one coherent set. That's why you make a copy into the database directory on the FileMaker server, because that's what you're going to restore back into service, right? So it's like literally you're at the factory back on the ground and they're in it, and you told the computer to reassemble a jet engine, and it found the parts all over the place and put them all back together, and they stuck it on the plane. That's what's happening. So, well, there is one question. David Angel had a couple questions. First, he said, well, if the server's not responding, can I ping the server first to check? And the ping will tell you if the hardware and the operating system have fully died. However, as we all know, the FileMaker server is 5, 6, 7 separate processes. For those of you who are not super deep technically, FileMaker server is a combination of 5 or 6 different programs that all say they're FileMaker server, and they work together. And normally you can't see the difference in them, but they're all working together. And if those programs are running on Windows or on Mac and they just quit and crash, the operating system most likely is still running in most cases. Okay. In which case you could ping it and you'd probably still get a response back on the ping, right? So it's not, a ping will simply tell you if the whole thing is really dead, right? So yeah, if the engine actually fully fell off and it's really gone, right? So how many different backup systems do you have from Stoic Dog? You want to take time to think about the answer for that?
I'm like, should I add them all up? How do you answer the question? We do not deploy a server with any less than 3. Let's start there.
3 separate backup
sets.
I would, you could call it a set, but basically it's a destination of where it's going to go. Does that make sense? And they're not single point of failure things. So like different separate drives that are not rated together. So like not like virtual drives. Well, on Amazon EC2 would be virtual, but generally if you're rolling your own hardware, I'm talking about separate drives that you buy. Either the little chip drives, the M2 chips that are really like look like RAM memory and they're hard drives, or SSDs of some type, 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch drives, separate drives. And then also you want one that's off site somewhere, because there are things called hurricanes, tornadoes, and random acts of terrorists and things. And that could all wipe out if it's in one spot on a server rack or in your closet. Yeah. So.
Yep. Yeah. We do 1 copy on disk in, I'll say, most virtual environments. That's a huge hand wave, sorry. But yeah, in general, we usually have FileMaker server itself directly producing some backups. Those can go onto a or several hard drives. If it's an on-site server with physical media attached or something, you want backups on basically each of those drives 100% of the time. And the reason for that is, for example, we have experienced this, not while I worked here, but previous to me working here, where a power surge, some sort of outage event like that happened, and basically everything but one drive in a server with 4 or 5 or 6 different drives and copies of the backups, all but one were fried.
Actually, I had one server where it was 4 and it toasted all 4. It's only happened once in 30 years or so. But then how many times with how many servers with 4 drives did it toast 3? Well, that's happened 5 or 6 times. And how many times it has toasted 2? Right. So once again, a lot of people are using Amazon. We use a lot of Amazon EC2, which is Amazon's data center. We don't use a lot of Microsoft data center. We're using a lot of Amazon. What kind of they're platform agnostic. They don't care with your Mac or Windows. They don't care. And etc. So that was that question. David Angel says, suggest to disable shadow copies in Windows ?
No, I don't know why you would.
Okay.
You wouldn't use them for backups, not for FileMaker anyway, but lots and lots of backup systems that run within the VM, basically, or within the Windows, like not outside of a VM or something like that, but inside the computer, if you will. Sorry, it's they're physical computers, virtual computers, whatever. So, but within the actual computer, if it's virtual, or on the computer, if it's a physical one, no, I probably wouldn't disable it unless it's causing a performance issue or something like that. Many backup softwares for Windows can use those snapshots usefully. You have to be careful. The live database should not be used. Yes, the live database should not be used in that scenario. If you're having to do a crash restoration, you're using some kind of a snapshot that's a Windows shadow copy or something that's like that. You may have your own technology choices and know what I'm talking about with any of those software. It doesn't matter. If you're doing some kind of a snapshot like that, you do not use the open copy of the database that was open in FileMaker Server when that happened. If you do, there is a large volume of work that is necessary for you to make that snapshot work so that that could be viable. It's incredibly fraught to actually do that correctly. It requires a lot of code, a lot of care. Don't. It's a lot easier to have more frequent backups and just restore. You will save yourself a lot of pain and not have to, test stuff and find out on, what is often the worst day of your life, that the thing didn't work correctly and that the backup that you were relying on is in fact non-viable. You want to avoid putting yourself in that position where possible.
Okay, so let me, this is a chance for me to clarify it just a little bit here. So one is I was unaware that you could even attempt to try to put something like that back together. I would say absolutely. I mean, I think Claris Engineering could, but unless you have Claris Engineering working for you, and I can assure you,
theoretically or officially, that is what file pausing is. I don't.
Yeah, no.
That's why we just say no. Yeah,
we're just saying,
I have to tell you guys why the recommendation is no.
I just tell them no. Just tell them no, because otherwise they're going to think it's some sort of viable thing because they're smarter than everyone else. And so here's the thing with files. An FMP12 file has states that it exists in, and it brings us back to this idea. So a FileMaker FMP12 file can be closed. It can be open, running on Pro and or on server. And those are the two states. If it's open, don't make a copy of it while it's open, which means it's actively being used by either server or Pro. It's open. Don't copy it. If you, that's why you use FileMaker Server, because FileMaker Server can gracefully make a backup copy of it for you while it's open. It's the only thing that can do that. So if it's running and you make a snapshot of the server, that's fine, but that snapshot of that open database is roasted, it's fried. Yeah. It's like putting a baked engine on the wing and trying to take off with it. Odds of it even being able to boot would be very small. It would probably fail outright. It wouldn't be a small little error, it'd be huge. So you can snapshot the machine with the database. Just understand that database is a throwaway. Okay, so if the file is open, the only thing that can make a backup is FileMaker Server. The backup that is written, when it creates the backup, it writes a copy of the backup that's closed. So once the backup process runs in FileMaker Server, you have a live file. You also have a backup, which is closed. After that's done, a snapshot is fine to capture that backup that's sitting there. Or if it's both written on the same drive, snapshot the whole drive. The live files are throwaways. The backup is still good because it was closed at the time you did that. So, makes sense? It's kind of an important thing. Yep. I don't know if we have more questions. Do you
backups?
Yeah, so we write the
backups. Absolutely, all day, every hour, in fact.
What Jacob does for those of you, if you ever want to hire him for a couple hours of work or whatever it is, he sets our servers up so they makes backups onto the Amazon server, onto the actual virtual server itself. Then he grabs the backup, so it's a copy that's closed. Then he can zip it or do whatever, and he sends it off to Amazon into the S3 vault with a ransomware protection, basically deflector shields on it, right? So the idea is that we write it into Amazon S3 with a mandatory lock on it, which prohibits it from being edited or deleted for 30 days, which means that no one can molest it without a court order, and even then it'd be sketchy, molest that backup within 30 days. So it's unmolestable, because if you're attacked by bad people, they're going to go after your backups first. Number one, they go after your backups. If they can't get your backups, they're probably not going to actually finish attacking your server. If they can get to your backups, they encrypt the backups, then they encrypt the server, and then they send you a little note saying that you owe them $100,000 to restore your.
There's a couple cool things about it. So the ransomware protection thing that we have set up uses Amazon's legal compliance mechanisms. So the features that we're using to protect businesses here, like inside of Amazon in S3, where these backups are being placed, is the same one that if you were at a big company and someone got subpoenaed, right, and you need to do record preservation for court ordered production or something like that, right? So kind of legal mechanisms like that, and you have lawyers involved. There you can like impose this after the fact on things. It's that. So you can lock stuff up inside of Amazon. We're using the same set of features for that. So you have 30 days. If the ransomware like tries to encrypt those backups, it actually will, so the ransomware succeed, except you'll just have 2 copies.
Yeah, when you
one of them won't be messed with.
Yeah, it won't. The files become read only. The 30 days is somewhat arbitrary on our end. You can set it for, like when people first set it up, they'd set up for 3 days. That's not nearly enough time to protect yourself. So at least a month, in my opinion. So
you can hose yourself on a long weekend with 3 days. So
yep. So Stoic Dog says Cold World. Mark, if you have questions on Twitch or YouTube, let me know.
There's another one from David.
Yeah. You want to read
Does
that?
FMS still need to back up to the same server before copying the backup to another place?
You need a source for the thing that's being replicated. You have to have one copy somewhere that does exist and is not the live file.
Yeah. So when you write, okay, I don't entirely
ask your question differently, maybe, David.
For FileMaker servers still need to back up to the same server before. Okay, when FileMaker server runs the backup command, it has to write to a drive it can see. Okay, so
maybe he's asking about the thing where you can't write backups to network drives.
Well, then you'd write it locally on FileMaker server, and then you'd have a PowerShell or something that would go and grab it and do whatever you want to do after that, right? So, how long would it take a competent hacker to get past the encryption? The encryption. Are you
talking about
Amazon? He's talking about Amazon S3.
You should add more words to your question there, Stoic Dog.
I mean, it's going to be
which encryption? We've done live streams on the layers of encryption. That's why I'm asking.
4 or 5 layers of encryption. Yeah, for the backup file. So the file is. Okay, let's say ear encryption is what? Is it 250? Is it?
It's AES 256 CBC, I think.
No, it's higher than that. I think they're 2048 now. They went up to 2048 on the ear. Okay, yeah. So how long would it take to break into modern encryption, Jacob Taylor, without a supercomputer?
Good luck. If you happen to be employed by a specific 3-letter agency that is headquartered at Fort Meade or whatever.
Lakeland.
Maybe you have cooler tools and maybe some knowledge about math facts that none of the rest of us have. But no, appreciably, no, you're not getting into it. Nobody else is either.
Yeah, just okay. So back up. Okay, so stop. Okay, you need to explain. Okay, I'm going to tee this up. Jacob Taylor. I'm writing backups. My files have ear encryption on them, so no one can open them unless they have the ear encryption.
Mm-hmm.
So, am I protected against ransomware hackers with that?
No.
Why?
Those are different things.
Why?
They address different threats and problems to your database. So, ear encryption will, for example, ensure that I think in some ways the live files are also encrypted. I'll ignore the encryption and memory conversation, but and the files on disk will be encrypted. The backups on disk will be encrypted. The backups uploaded to third-party locations will be encrypted. But they're encrypted with your key or a password that you know, essentially. This is different from ransomware, where this key is being imposed upon you. That's what ransomware is.
Let me phrase it
someone-
another way. So the ear protects other people from opening your file. The ransomware people don't give a shit about opening your file. They want to put encryption on top of your file so you can't even get into it ever again. That's the fundamental.
Without paying them some money to
It's
get the
insidious.
little
It's
thing.
totally backwards. Totally backwards, but that's the way that works. Yeah. So the ear keeps other people out. I mean, if you had the winning lottery numbers or nuclear missile codes or the stealth bomber characteristics or of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, yeah, they might want to get into it, and ear would help with that. But if they just want 100,000, they don't care what's in your database. They just want $100,000 from you, and so they're going to encrypt your backup. And if they can do that, then they're encrypt your live file, and you're going to get a little note. Okay, and so it's different. But it's different. Okay, they're both bad. So that's why we're having this conversation.
One's someone's trying to break into your stuff and get your data, and then ear, right? They'd be unable to do so because you have encrypted your file to protect against a situation like that. Whereas the other is somebody has a business model where they lock your stuff up and sell it back to you.
Yep. Yeah.
With
they don't really care. They don't have to get
additional
into it.
future threats of.
They don't have to get into it to see it. They're going to
Apparently posting
your-
the data on the homepage of CNN is now a part of the business model. Also, I keep reading articles about there was some healthcare thing that happened recently where they got ransomware. They, attempted to deal with it internally or something like that, and now there's a second ransomware purveyor involved because the news was made about the big company and they had so many problems. Somebody found a second way in, it sounds like.
Oh man.
Like just it's Change Healthcare if you're watching the news or not. But
I don't know who they are. All right, cool. So let's talk about this. So and we are going to run out of time, but let's just bang through a scenario. End user reports database is not available. Okay. So this is to confirm the outage is actually FileMaker Server. Can you get into the server? Yes or no?
Yep.
You get to the internet? Yes or no? Right?
Yep. Can you check the
through the-
log? Does it look like it's crashed? Does it look like it's running? Okay, it's crashed. Okay. If yes, crash, in other words, you go in there and the log indicates that's what happened. And then your files are hosted. This is your the joke I continually make to everybody at RCC, and I will make it to all of you today. You can violate one law at a time. Try not to violate two laws at a time. This is your second law being violated because you had a crash and it came up unsafe. It opened the databases for you. You want to avoid that. Again, it's a situation where the problem cascades. It's not merely you have a problem. The problem is the FileMaker server crashed and your business is down now. That's a problem. Try not to add more to your pile to deal with that day. So in this case, you come in, it's a crash, you look at the log, confirm it's crashed, the files automatically open. That's bad. You need to then sit down and, if possible, review the log, figure out when it crashed, when the backup was before that crash, and restore to that backup.
So that brings up an important part that the running assumption is, and this is why some people are afraid of this, is that they're like, well, I'm going to restore from a backup, but I might lose an hour of data. Well, if losing the hour of data is not acceptable, then you need to back up more often. Well, it takes too long to back up. Then you need to adjust the design of your database and spend more money on hardware, right? Well, but I'm cheap. I've got a 100 gigabyte database and I have a monthly budget of $85. Okay. You've got a problem. You fundamentally have a problem. Your database is larger than your budget. Your functional need is larger than your budget. And that's a problem, right? And so, yes. So yeah, that also brings back this idea that, well, if you lose an hour of data, what does that really mean? Well, if you really, really, really can't lose an hour of data, then you need two FileMaker servers or three FileMaker servers with complete sets of data, and they replicate each other every 10 seconds or so. And we've done that with the MirrorSync product. We talk about that. It's basically this kind of clustering idea. And that way, when one dies, then the other two or the other one's running. And you didn't lose any data except maybe someone's immediate half transaction, 10 seconds of data.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you want to go look up the streams that we've done on that, it was 360 Works Mirror Sync Enterprise.
The keywords enterprise. Yeah, put enterprise
Yep.
in there.
We did a whole live stream on that where we
5 days. 5 days. It was awesome. I
Yeah.
loved it. That
we
was
had we had
cool.
machines all over the world keeping a copy of FMSP in sync, and then we gave everybody the address to, you can go watch it, but just very short. You give everybody one address and they would connect to the nearest FileMaker server, and then the mirror sync would keep them all in sync with each other. And so we had people editing records, and it does deconfliction and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of the neatest shows I've ever seen. All right, so we established that if there, just keep in mind if you crash and it auto opens the live files, then as unsavory as this is, the correct process then is to close the files down and not use them and still restore from a backup. Well, Fred and Sally were in there using it for the last 30 minutes. Their work might be gone. Okay, well, how important is that versus a database that may someday be permanently damaged and not openable by anyone? Well, it's just this one time ever. Okay, well, it's one time. I guess you're okay. But then it happens this week, and then it happens 2 weeks later, and then after a year or so, you've got, a problem. So,
yep.
FileMaker Server, by the way, is not going to do that. It doesn't crash. If you crash it, it's because we had the janitor who would come in, who would plug the vacuum into the battery backup attached to the
That was such a good
server.
one.
Yeah, every night, 12:45 in the morning, does the server go down? Why? Oh, well, because, Juan and Juanita are in there. And then you hear the popping sound and the whole thing goes down. So, because the janitorial staff doesn't know and doesn't give it.
Yeah. The server is crashed. We know it's crashed. We've actually confirmed the files are closed. We're going to determine what the last good backup is. So we're going to navigate in and find you can view this on as of 19, late 19, they finally added the log viewer back to the FileMaker Server admin console. That is amazing. And then also, when you're in a crash scenario, you're probably still just going to be opening the log directly with like Notepad or something, and scrolling all the way to the end, because that's what everyone actually does. And so you're going to go all the way to the end, and you're going to look, and probably if everything has been otherwise configured correctly, you'll go to the end of the log file. FileMaker Server will have started up after whatever this crash problem is, but it won't have opened the databases. You'll go before the start, find the last backup, which one ran, locate it on disk, do the restoration, bring it back online. Still, as always, I will always recommend do a reboot in here somewhere. Obviously not after you've opened the files up and told all the users to be in it. Maybe do it before that. Yeah. Just, process wise. But I always recommend doing that. And again, back to like weird Windows issues, weird Mac issues, weird Linux issues. Many things are cleared by rebooting a machine. It may or may not even be relevant. I would just, as a silly, magic thing, do it anyway. You don't know what it will fix, and it usually doesn't make the problem worse. You can then bring the machine up in a clean environment, and clean means it came up, you look at it, you watched it boot, nothing weird happened when that, hopefully you know what that looks like for your server. If you don't, I don't know, reboot it and look at it. Sometimes you have a feel for what normal looks like. That's actually honestly the most difficult part of communicating some of this like emergency procedure type stuff is like there's one of the like unstated things in the entire document is what does normal look like for your server? I can't answer that for you. We configure all of our servers almost exactly the same so that normal's the same, right? But if you didn't listen to us, didn't hear from us, haven't configured the server the way we recommend it, something like that, normal for what your file and server behaves like may be something else. So that's what you're trying to keep an eye out for. And so you come in, you've restored from a backup, you reboot, in some order there, bring the file back up and tell your users, hey, you're back.
There was a quick question. Stoic Dog's asking how often we back up on our corporate databases and stuff, Jacob?
Hourly.
Is it hourly? And
it's hourly.
I have a personal Mac FileMaker server in my home office, and I have like 4 or 5 different separate SSD drives attached to it. Each one fires off. So I have different backups, but they're every 15, 20 minutes. I stagger them. I don't run all the backups at the top of the hour because they will tend to they're single threaded, I guess, kind of per se. So if you have 5 backups that all try to run back to back to back, you have this big gaping hole where nothing's
Yeah, and
happening.
even parallel, like there's a parallel backups feature that will try to back up multiple files at the same time, but it still can't run multiple schedules simultaneously
Yeah,
in the same
yeah,
way.
yeah.
And so
Yeah, I stagger them around,
you
so all the way
stagger
around
them.
the clock
Yeah.
hour. WJ Warner on YouTube has a question. Did you touch on the SSL issues as causes for crashing, or is the SSL issue
It's not a cause. No, I've
the
never seen it
result?
be a cause. It's a result. Yeah.
That's the result.
Um,
That's a Mac thing.
on Yeah. So I've seen it like a grand total of once on Windows is the short version. I think it's a Mac thing. Yeah. I actually can tell you what goes wrong. Claris has never fixed it. I don't know if it's a fundamental problem that just can't be fixed or whatever. Basically, sorry, highly technical sidebar. On a Mac, you have FileMaker Server, and then in front of that is Apache, which is the web server that deals with, it actually doesn't deal with the admin console. That one listens directly on port 16,001. But everything else, XML API, data API, WebDirect, whatever, all that XML, all this stuff, all the other processes there, they all run through Apache. So everything that's coming in on web-looking things, HTTP generally speaking, will run through Apache. When there are some kinds of issues on Mac, like a power issue, a sudden reboot, and basically, I think what happens is Apache doesn't shut down fully or properly or something. FileMaker Server gives Apache the SSL like files, the key file, the certificate, and that kind of stuff, and a password because they're encrypted. And so it has to give it both. So in the scenario, what functionally goes wrong is Apache loses the password. I don't know if it doesn't get communicated. I don't know if it forgets it. I'm not 100% certain on like what the actual fundamental problem there is. But Apache tries to start back up again after whatever this crash is that's happened, can't get the SSL passwords correctly. Apache fails hard and will not start up in that scenario. And so what you end up with is like, if you're lucky, FileMaker Server, just the server software and no other things come up. And you're like, you get this weird, like half booted FileMaker Server looking thing. It's actually really easy to fix. You shut everything down and you delete the SSLs out. There's a script in there on Mac these days, actually,
Oh, that's one of those script. Okay.
library, FileMaker Server, CStore. There's like a delete SSL script in there on Mac or something like that, or uninstall something like that. If you run it, it clears the SSLs out. That, if that's the problem that has happened, like something has forgotten the password, I'm using air quotes here, that will clear it. You come back up, it will not have an SSL. Obviously, you just deleted it. You install your SSL, restart everything, and you're onto it.
All right. So keep talking while I'm going here. Let me see if I can do this for you. Let's see.
Yeah.
You want to keep talking on that? I'm going to bring up DBW2 real quick here, which
Sure.
is a server, and we can show
Oh
you.
yeah, so you can screen. Yeah, show it.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Stand by. Can you see my screen? So then where do I go, Jacob, for that? Is it for your cleaning up-y thingy? Where's that? Where's that?
Oh
at?
no, this is on the hard drive. Are you screen shared into actual DWW2?
No, I guess I could do
That would be where that stuff all is. We can look in the CStore folder.
Oh, okay. Done. Let me try this.
I think there's a script. I'm pretty sure there's a script in there. Sounds great.
We're gonna try that. Yeah, I don't know how
Nice.
much more I
Oh,
use.
it's even open. Nice.
Okay, so what
All
are we?
right. Shrink the databases, or yeah, let's look at expand CStore right there. It's
Okay.
just above.
C store. So this is a FileMaker server folder, right?
Mhm. You see Mac hard drive
Okay.
at the top, and then we've got library, which is what we're in.
Okay, so C store. I'm gonna go in C store. Now what do I do?
So in here, you see the uninstall.shell. That cleans. Don't run that. Don't double click on it. Sorry, I should. That's the best way to say that. Don't double
click.
That is not Slack screen sharing. No, that is the native screen share on all Macs. Every Mac computer ships with this, and it works across all versions. So I was addressing a David Angel question.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
So in this CStore folder, you have a few different files that are relevant. The server key, the server custom, those are like your actual SSLs. Get the which one's the intermediate?
Is that one? No, that one? No, that's a command.
That's a search one. And then key store is a different. See, key store and root are actually the like the SSL root stores, because FileMaker still ships their own for some reason instead of using the operating system one. Hopefully someday that will
This is
change,
all
but,
going to get some level of love coming up too in the next release, right? The
I
Let's
don't know
Encrypt thing?
about this. Actually, on Linux, I think yes. I may have seen that changelog.
Is it Let's Encrypt on Mac or is it only on Linux?
Let's Encrypt should be both.
Okay.
It might be
would be in
Linux.
here,
It
though,
might
right?
be Linux only, but it would be trivial to add it to Mac in a subsequent release or something. That would not be difficult for them once they write it the first time on Linux, which is really where people really want it.
Yeah.
Like they want it on Linux. That's the like best use case for it, because you're like, it's a cloud server. We're just gonna be able to magically auto reboot for SSL stuff. Anyway, so specific issue is you come in here, you're going to look in the logs directory. You're going to see really weird stuff with FileMaker Server can't boot. And I can't demonstrate this and can't tell you what it looks like because I don't think this has happened on Richard's server, actually. Not recently, anyway. But there's some logs on Mac in the logs. Yeah, there's those logs, and then there is, where's the Apache logs?
I don't know where those
are. Those are HTTP server. So if you expand that gently, and then there's a log directory, there you go. That'll have all kinds of stuff in there. So we're going to ignore what's in here because I don't think any of this is relevant for the demonstration.
No.
But you'll check the recent ones. You can see the file modification dates. That's how you know recent. One of them will indicate, basically with very bad verbiage, that Apache or FileMaker Server can't load their SSL. That's it. Like it'll say that. It'll say tried to open the SSL file, and you'll see it'll be one of the ones in the C store folder, and it'll say, I don't have the password, or the password didn't work, and it says something very literally like that. That is a specific scenario where you're going to come in here and you're going to like run that uninstall that shell, basically.
I clicked it,
but you're going to
once.
yeah, don't. I don't think it'd matter while the server's running, but
yeah,
don't find out.
don't find out.
Short version.
Okay.
But yeah, so and you'll go in there and basically clean your actual SSL files out, reboot everything completely. It'll come back up. FileMaker Server itself will generate one of those test certificates if you have ever installed it and you didn't set the SSL up during the like initial setup of FileMaker Server, and you said no. You click through all the warnings and say use Claris's SSL or whatever, the testing one. That's what it'll do. It'll make a new one of those if there isn't one already. That'll allow the software to start up just fine, but it won't be ready for users at that point. So you'll go on, to the admin console. You'll go to configuration, and then you'll go to SSL on the left side.
And then you
you'll import, and then you'll just do it's just a regular SSL install as if you were doing a little maintenance or something like that. Your thing was going to expire in 2 weeks or something. And then it's normal. Shut everything down, reboot the machine again, bring it back up. It'll just work.
Yeah, it sounds like lots of fun. That's where you can always, bother Jacob if you want. Depends if you're running a Mac server or not. I just do it because generally it works pretty well, and I'm a Mac guy, and so. But Jacob's a Linux guy. He loves Linux, and it seems to work actually pretty well too. So
I'm pretty pleased with where the Linux stuff is at. People who've been watching for a long time know we haven't like super loudly endorsed or said, hey, everyone should use the Linux version. I'm not going to do that because a lot of our customers really want to be able to own and run their systems, and there's no graphical environment. Like if you're comfortable in the command line, obviously ask for that and I will help you, no worries. But just practically speaking, a lot of our customers are on Mac and Windows, and it's because you can go in there and click and drag and copy and paste and do stuff with the server. That said, it's cheaper to run. There are some upsides. I've personally, and why I'm saying yes to people who ask for Linux now, I've stopped seeing the bad previous bugs that we saw in the FileMaker Server Linux builds, where a silly example, but kind of what I'm talking about when I say it stopped doing this. There was a bug in one of the 19 versions where if you, set your details up for the send mail command wrong and then sent it server, did a perform script on server, so send mail's running from the server side on Linux, that would deadlock the FileMaker Server process and crash it. And it, like, just like some mild configuration issue on your end. It was a dumb bug
Blows
somewhere.
the whole thing up.
Yeah, whatever. Like that's actually great because Claris fixed it. It's fixable. We love that. Also, when you stop hearing about problems like that, it means that those builds have reached a level of maturity where bugs like that have been found and fixed. After that is when you should be comfortable using software like that. All software has bugs. I'm not gonna say that the current version is completely bug free. It's not. We know we've got some reports in. It's fine. We advise clients on what versions they should be running and stuff like that. That's not emergency, checklist related, but that's one of the reasons to shoot us an email and say, hey, we've got an application that does things like this. Are we good for going up to 20.3.2? That's a great question to ask before you do it. So you can have some expert assistance in making sure you're not going to run into weird compatibility issues or a bug that like specifically affects your application or something like that. We can help with stuff like that. So.
All right. Well, we have to land the airplane. So with that in mind, tomorrow, Margaret, what's the live stream for tomorrow? Are you still functional over there?
I'm still here. Yes.
I see Kat there next to you. So what's the status for tomorrow? What's the schedule for tomorrow?
What is the schedule? Great. Live. Oh, it's the one that I need to rename again.
Yeah, some performance improvement stuff. Yeah, that'll be exciting. All right, whoop. Tomorrow will be good as well. Please post your questions to support@rcconsulting.com, support@rcconsulting.com. Stoic Dog is here. Welcome, Mikey Mike, the other Mikey Mike, Larry 2, Jacob 1, David, Angel. Great questions. Great questions from everyone. All right. Thanks, Jacob Taylor. Good job.
Have a good one, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Yep. Bye.